maybe it's time to say goodbye. At least, not now, maybe soon. Because today what we're doing is going over to an idea that was proposed by a BPM sports talk radio analyst. If you frequent the network, you're probably familiar with Anthony Desaulniers and the work that he does on the program, because earlier on October 1st, 2024, he made this tweet which garnered some attention, but it illuminates a very interesting idea. We'll see how this tweet ages, but I think Brendan Gallagher will get bought out in the summer of 2025. And this was replied to a bunch by Canadiens fans. Let's go out there and read some of these. My goodness, Brendan Gallagher was slow. It seemed like he lost his hockey IQ. This idea doesn't make any sense. If the Canadiens were an aspiring team, it would have become a reserve. It is no longer able to keep up with the pace of a long schedule because it has become so fast. I think they're referring to Gallagher as a player. Even though this seems like a plausible option, I think Hughes and Gorton will dare not to press this button. I hope not. He deserves to stay in Montreal. There are guys like that who should make a career in the same club unless they ask for a trade. No, but seriously, yesterday Brendan Gallagher looked like a turtle. Even on the power play he was awful. Yes, I wrote power play. Slow and unbalanced. Honestly, I want to buy him out now, but it's starting to hurt the team to see him on the ice. Me too, another poster says. So, to varying degrees of agreeance and disagreeance, we are seeing Canadiens fans respond to the idea of a Gallagher buyout, and Desaulniers even goes out there and replies with the buyout results here on Twitter. If the Montreal Canadiens were to buy out Brendan Gallagher, they would save $4.75 million in 2025-2026, they would save $2.25 million in 2026-2027, and then they'd be on the cap with a penalty of $1.75 million for 27-28 and 28-29. So that's our idea. Let's talk about Brendan Gallagher as a player, where he has progressed over the past few years, and whether or not a buyout actually could make sense in the eyes of the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Gallagher is 32 years old, so he's not really like old, but he's getting up there. Signed on till the end of 2027, making $6.5 million a year. 5'9", 183. We all recognize Gallagher as the guy that he was, a snarky bulldog who eventually worked his way up from a 5th-round position in the 2010 draft all the way to being one of the top Montreal Canadiens goal scorers on the team. He had maxed out at 33 goals in 2018-19 and also at 54 points in 2017-18. Towards the end of the 2010s, Gallagher was a monster, and he was continuously putting up strong numbers for the Canadiens. As the years went on, though, the numbers shifted around a little bit. Gallagher had 23 points in 35 games in 2020-2021, which followed up a 43-point campaign in 59 games. This was like the prime of his career. He was consistently putting up big numbers. However, that production did end up dropping in the 2021 Stanley Cup Finals run. Gallagher only had 6 points in 22 games, although we shall recognize that his role with Philippe Deneau and the injured Thomas Tatar was very, very positive. Gallagher was one of the better two-way forwards who, despite not putting up too many points, was very effective, and one of the reasons the Canadiens was even able to make the finals in the first place. The years after, though, Gallagher was still a part of this bad Canadiens team. They went from the finals to losing out on Price and Weber to making the draft lottery interesting every single year, and Gallagher was in need of a contract. He had signed the deal, he's making $6.5 million a year now, a contract which a lot of Habs fans said, hey, that's really not going to age well, because Gallagher and the way that he plays, he's rough, he's tough, he's physical, he loves to play with pace, he loves to get under his opponent's skin. That's not going to age well for a guy who's only 5'9". Like, it's hard enough for a guy who is 6'3" to continuously be a brute every single year. What more for a guy who's definitely not that size? So for Gallagher, there was always going to be this grace period where Habs fans understood, hey, we may be seeing Gallagher on his last legs of effective Canadiens play, of legitimate middle to top 6 caliber play. Because as the years have gone on, Gallagher has definitely declined in point production and overall usefulness with the team. He had 31 points in 77 games played this most recent year, including 16 goals, which isn't bad, but as Anthony Desaulniers goes out there and talks about, heading into 2024-2025, the way Gallagher has shown off in the preseason, for example, has not been great. And I know we've been bringing up the same sentence every single video here over the past few days, but the preseason is the time when the aspiring prospects and NHL hopefuls normally play their best. You won't see Nick Suzuki or Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews absolutely tearing up the preseason. It never happens like that. Instead, you'll get guys like Mathieu Olivier, for example, and Adam Fantilli and Carter Yakemchuk and a whole bunch of other not-so-top-of-the-radar guys showing off that they belong in the NHL and giving themselves a great resume. So I'm not going to go out there and necessarily blame Brendan Gallagher for not getting a goal a game in the preseason, but it is understandable to look at the way he had performed and say, hey, the guy isn't really all too great. And sure, it's to be expected, right? We all knew this was coming, but with this in mind, you think about the Canadiens and their path, their timeline, they have this top six, they've got all these guys. When everybody's healthy, Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Suzuki, Laine, Newhook, Doc, and then you add Demidov in there, and then you have Josh Waugh and Newhook on the third line, and then you have Michael Hage or Oliver Kapanen or whomever else stepping in, and you still have Anderson, Gallagher, Pezzetta, Evans, everybody else towards the end of the lineup there. You start thinking about it and you're like, hey, there are too many guys here for the Canadiens that could realistically make a bid to being on this team in a full-time capacity over the next few years. With Gallagher's contract expiring in 2027, which is 3 years from now, there is the capacity, I would say, for the Canadiens to even think about the idea of buying this dude out, which is why Anthony Desaulnier's idea is really interesting to me. It's not necessarily that Gallagher is a bum and that he's not going to be worth it. Okay, I take that back. He's definitely not a $6.5 million player, and I don't see him improving to the point that he can be that once again. But because the Canadiens could probably contend a little bit sooner than we may have projected, maybe it only takes like a year. Maybe towards the end of 24-25, Ivan Demidov plays, let's say, 7 or 8 games at the end of the season. He gets 8 points, and he's really good. And Lane Hutson's on the team, and he's scoring points like crazy. And Oliver Kapanen makes the team, and he's awesome. And Josh Waugh is putting up 30, 40 assists on the season. And Kirby Dach has a great season. And then Patrick Laine comes back, and he scores 30 goals in a limited sample. The Canadiens could be good next year. And thinking about what they could accomplish without that $6.5 million cap tying them down, it gets me really intrigued as to whether or not the Canadiens could think about getting rid of Brendan Gallagher. Again, let's review the buyout numbers that were posted by Desaulnier. $4.75 million in savings in 25-26, 2.25 in 26-27, and then 1.75 over the next 2 years in 27-28 and 28-29. By 2027, what's the cap gonna be? 95, 98, $100 million? Who really knows? 1.75 million as a cap buyout penalty isn't really gonna feel like much. And for the Canadiens long term, if you wanted to free up some of those roster spots, you wanted to give Brendan Gallagher's role to a guy like Luke Tuck, for example, or Florian Xhekaj, who could maybe provide the same snarl in 2026, and who will do so at a fraction of the cost. Honestly, the idea of a Gallagher buyout makes sense in my mind. It's just very difficult to emotionally come to terms with that idea because Gally has been the heart and soul of this team for so many years. Him, Price, PK, he's a product of an era of Canadiens hockey that we may never see again. And heading into the new generation, who knows whether his role is really all too needed anymore. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the idea of a Brendan Gallagher buyout? And do you agree with Desaulnier's analysis here on social media that says that it could happen? He's predicting it. 2025, summer, Gallagher buyout. Do you agree, disagree, or are you somewhere in between? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, why or why not. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.